Hello, everybody, and welcome to this information session for Page 73's 2025 development programs. We're going to be talking about the two programs that Page 73 runs every year that you can apply for. We're going to take you through the application itself. We have our current 2024 Page 73 Playwriting Fellow, Sebastian, with us, who will be able to both reflect on his time so far with us and answer any questions. And of course, we're here to answer any questions you have, as well as go through a couple frequently asked questions that we typically get. And so we'll sort of put them out there into this recording. So to start with some introductions, I'm Michael Walkup. I'm the Artistic Director of Page 73. Kari Ullman, our Associate Artistic Director, is here. And then that is Jose Sebastian Alberti, our 2024 Page 73 Playwriting Fellow and member of the 2024 Writers Group. So to just get started, this application is extraordinarily important to Page 73. We call it the lifeblood of the company. We call it the pipeline. This is the way we meet playwrights. There are, of course, ways that like an agent might send us a script, or I would go see a reading or something, but truly like 99% of the playwrights we meet, the plays we get to know, are through this application every year. We put lots and lots of resources into it. We hire really talented readers. We ourselves spend, many hours reading these applications closely. And so we dedicate all of that time to it because it is so central to us. So just to say, this is a really great, central, and important process for us, and we get excited for this every year. I'll start by talking a little bit about the eligibility for applying to our 2025 programs. Page 73 has a very specifically carved out mission in regards to the career point of a playwright, not in any way regarding the age or location or any of that. It's the career point of an professional, full off-Broadway premiere that runs for 4 weeks in New York City. We're looking for playwrights who haven't had that yet, but are working towards it. Our development programs are designed to help playwrights get drafts of scripts that are ever more ready for that opportunity. And separate and not a part of this application process, Page 73 does produce off-Broadway premieres that always represent that first premiere by a playwright. So in addition to the eligibility requirement being that you have not yet had that level of a premiere in New York City off-Broadway, we also support US residents, regardless of citizenship status, but folks residing in the States. We work with people who are not currently enrolled in a full-time academic program, whether that's undergraduate or graduate. So a certificate program, something that meets maybe once a week, that can be fine. But a full like master's degree or baccalaureate degree, wait until you are in your final semester of that to apply for the next year's programs. And then we work with early career playwrights. That's our whole thing. But as I was saying about the career point of this premiere, we're looking for those early career folks who are really getting ready to have that career milestone of the premiere. And I say that to sort of be transparent that there is sort of a too green for Page 73 moment. We also encourage writers who are just starting out. We want you to keep writing and keep thinking up new works, but we do ask that if you're going to put in the time to apply for Page 73, you wait until you have 2 full-length scripts under your belt, maybe 3 1-acts if that's more the style that you're writing in. Something beyond your first go at this, or first or second go. That was sort of an FAQ that I put at the top, but okay. What you're applying for is one of or both of 2 opportunities, and so we're going to spend a little bit of time tonight describing them. The first and our longest running development program is the Page 73 Playwriting Fellowship. That award goes to 1 playwright every year. It comes with a $20,000 cash stipend, a $10,000 development budget that can be used discretionarily by the playwright in consultation with Page 73. And it also comes with 1 public or 1 workshop that culminates in public readings. the discretionary budget might be used to do other workshops and other readings, or maybe it's used for travel, or maybe it's used to augment some other opportunity. It's not meant itself to support like a production or anything like that. But you know, fellows over the years have been very creative with how that budget gets used. And of course, the cash stipend is meant to help in all the ways that cash can help. So that goes to just one playwright every year. That's obviously the most competitive opportunity we have. But we also have a writers group every year, and this has been going since 2007, so also quite a while now. And we accept 8 writers into our writers group every year. The fellow may or is often one of those writers, especially if they live in New York City, which you do have to be in the writers group. You do not have to be the fellow. So if the fellow's in New York City and they're not currently in like a conflicting other group or something like that, then they'll be invited into the group also. But so we're always looking for an additional 7 or sometimes 8 writers who are New York City based, who are looking very specifically. So you're applying for 2025. So we're looking very specifically in 2025 for a bi-weekly evening writers group that's going to meet Tuesday nights in Fort Greene, Brooklyn. It's pretty specific. That is how the group works. And so we ask you to think about whether that's the resource next year is the year, and that access to Fort Greene, Brooklyn on Tuesday evenings every other week or just about is something that will work well and serve your process in your writing next year. That would be the sort of way of putting the eligibility there. So Sebastian, you're in both. You are the fellow, you are in the writers group. My first question to you is if you could just sort of help folks understand how you're choosing to use your time in really in both those programs.
Yeah. So obviously it's March and I'm the fellow for 2024, so I'm still pretty early on in my fellowship. But honestly, like I think my plans have changed like 3 times now. I think when I applied, I wanted to work on a play that I was sort of in earlier stages with, and then last year I ended up working on that play and other development processes. So then I was like, okay, I'm gonna write a play if I get the fellowship. And then once I got the fellowship, with conversations with you guys were like, we really want to do a workshop of this play that you submitted during the process. And I was like, okay, great. I want to do some rewrites on that play. So I've really been spending, my fellowship so far thinking about that play, thinking about collaborators for that play, working on rewrites for it. And also just like having conversations with Michael and Kari. Like being a fellow, it's really awesome that you have Michael and Kari as a resource. So I've been doing just like lunches with them just to like chat about my career and about life and really just whatever is going on. And yeah, and then we're trying to figure out a workshop for this play. I'm trying to figure out ways to use development fund. I was going to use it for travel originally, but now I'm thinking of doing like an upstate sort of writer's self-directed retreat with the money, probably do another workshop, another play. But yeah, still in the early phases, mostly
Yeah.
rewriting.
And I like that. I like how you're highlighting that there's no, we don't lock you into some plan.
Yeah.
We asked for these applications in April. This is due April 28th. I probably should have said that at the top of the video. Hopefully you're still watching. In April of 2024 for 2025. So getting a sense of what you think you would do is really important, and
Yeah.
being clear about that's important. But holding you to it is not how this goes. In fact, one of the other times, Sebastian, you would have thought out loud with us about what it would be in the interview process later on
Mhm.
in even December. And I think things have changed since then. And that's great. Like, we celebrate that.
Yeah, and then in the writers group, I mean, I think I've shared one so far. And I brought in pages from this play that I'm sort of rewriting right now just to hear them out loud. And I think in that group, I think it's going to change over the year. I think like until that workshop happens, I'll probably be bringing pages in from this play that I'm working on. And then after that, I have some other ideas of plays I want to write. So I'll probably be bringing in like brand new pages, stuff that I'm excited about just to hear it with the group. Yeah.
I didn't actually take the time to sort of describe like how I-73 sort of is or feels or functions. So now, Sebastian, I feel like asking you to do that because you've been in the group a couple months now.
Yeah, so the Page 73 Writers Group, we meet like about every other week, on Tuesdays, like Michael was saying. And because it's 8 writers, usually two of us, I think that's the
Yeah.
structure. Two of us share every week, that we meet. And the meetings are about 3 hours. They start at 7 and end around like 10. So that gives you a big chunk of time to really dedicate to each writer, which is really nice. You don't feel like you're rushed, and people have brought in like very long excerpts of plays. I think we even read some sort of foolish drafts of plays. You can also do like homework style stuff where you have people read the play beforehand. My group, like not my group, but like the group I'm in, like we haven't used that yet. I think we like hearing the pages out loud and talking about them. But yeah, it's really nice. Michael and Kari buy really nice snacks, and it's a good time. It's very casual, but also rigorous and very friendly.
We take our snack buying pretty seriously, and Kari and I really are personally involved in the choices. We know, well, maybe some outsourcing of the actual shopping, but the decisions. Um, Thanks for that, Sebastian. That's really
Yeah.
helpful. That's really fantastic. I'm looking at my script just to be transparent to make sure I haven't missed any other crucial things. In fact, why don't I ask Kari, anything else you think I should add about the programs before we move into the application itself?
I think you got it.
Okay.
Let's go to the application itself. So now bear with me while I share my screen, and we are going to look at the application. Okay, here we go. Does this all look right, Michael? Have I got us there? All right, so this is the Page 73 Development Programs application. There is just the one application for both the fellowship and the writers group. Those are not separate applications. So I am just going to take you through it beat by beat. As Michael said, the deadline is April 28th at 11:59 p.m. That is a Sunday night. So please submit it by then so you can be considered. Program overview. Michael talked you through the fellowship and the writers group. As you're applying, take the time to read through the details of each to figure out what is best suited to your needs, what you would find most useful as you embark on your playwriting career. And yes, so as Michael mentioned, for writers group being either local to New York, or if you're especially committed, being able to commute to New York from Philadelphia or New Jersey. We've had a few come in from sort of expanded tri-state area, and they have been very dutiful and impressed us greatly. So it can be a little further flung, but we do take attendance very, very seriously for the group. It's how we build the community of writers there and build up trust and all of that. So do ask you to take that seriously as well when you're considering the group. And here we go, eligibility requirements. Michael has mentioned most of these as well. You do want to highlight the production one here. That's one of the questions we get asked the most about what constitutes a production in New York City. We define that as being fully contracted with Actors Equity and running for at least 4 weeks or 21 performances. So something that's on a showcase code just means that you are still eligible. You have not graduated. But just reach out to us if you have any questions about your status. And timeline. We spend a long chunk of the year reviewing these applications in great detail with all of the diligence. As Michael said, we have a wonderful crew of writers, directors, dramaturgs, designers, stage managers that we recruit and vet to help us review applications. So after the application closes on April 28th, we take months and months to sort of work through and consider them all very carefully. And so we will announce the semifinalists in the fall, in September, finalists in December, and the fellow selected at the end of December and announced in January of 2025. And we also build the writers group in that sort of fall, September to November slot. Submission procedure, we only accept applications through this form, so please don't send us materials any other way. They have to come to us through this module. And if you have any issues, just email us at info@page73.org and we'll help you get it sorted out. Okay, application materials. So now we're looking at the components of the application. So the first thing that I want to highlight is the letter of intent. This is a really, really essential part of the application because it's your chance to tell us who you are as a writer, but also, and most importantly, to answer the questions that we have posed to you here, because while the fellowship and the writers group are a great resource, it's also important that they meet you at the right time in your career. It's the right resource at the right time makes for the best fit. So that's why it's so important that you actually answer these questions. What do you consider your greatest artistic challenge, your greatest professional challenge, and getting really, really specific about how Page 73's development resources could benefit you in 2025. Because the resources are great, but they're not infinite. So we encourage you to think really carefully about how they could benefit you and your career. We want to get a sense of who you are as a writer, but we found when we review applications that sort of a more general artistic statement or, kind of an artistic manifesto are less successful because they are, again, not specifically answering the questions about why Page 73 and why now. So the next component is more familiar. You send us a full-length script as a PDF. We encourage you to include the character list. And then we are also asking for a 10-page sample that comes from that same full-length script. They can't be from two different things, a full-length and a 10-page excerpt from that same full-length. You don't have to include you don't have to start at the beginning, though that's often what most folks choose because it's easier to orient your readers in it. And yes, and then this is the application form itself. And one relatively new feature that we want to highlight here is this box where you can take 50 words to contextualize your sample. If you've chosen a 10-page sample that doesn't come from the beginning of your script, this is where you can tell us where you're picking up in the play. Or if you feel like your style or approach isn't easily communicated in 10 pages, you can tell us, oh, this is surrealism, or this is something crazy happens right after the 10-page cutoff. And just because we want to be the best readers of your work that we possibly can. So we're trying to give you sort of an opportunity to give us those clues so we can be good readers. And yes, and this is where you upload your materials and click submit. And that's it. It's pretty straightforward. You can reach out to us if there are any issues. So now that we've sort of raced you through the whole thing, Sebastian, I want to put you back on the spot and ask you how you approached your application, because I'm correct that this was your first time applying, right? Cool.
Yeah. I think I watched like a lot of these info sessions before I applied to just like figure out how you guys were reading. And I remember something that you mentioned that I found very useful and as like sort of North Star for my application was that for that letter of intent that you guys I think explained that like you have your readers literally answer like did they answer every question, and like it's literally just yes or no, like there's no like 5 to 1 through 10, it's literally yes or no for that, for like that question. So for my letter of intent I really just like answered every single question very obviously, like I didn't even try to frame it really, I was just like this is my artistic challenge, this is my professional challenge, this other resources could help me. And I don't know, I guess that was a good way to approach it. And then the other thing I want to say is that I really appreciated that, like please like contextualize this excerpt, because the play I submitted, it's a two-hander, but you have the two actors played 3 different couples throughout the play, and I've always really struggled to use it as a sample when I'm asked for an excerpt, because you get like one scene of one couple, but you don't understand that how the play is formed and how they weave together. So I use that spot, even though I think I chose from like early in the play, I use that slot in the forum to explain like, and then these two characters morph into these characters, who then morph into these characters. Because even though obviously you ended up reading the full play, I think that that allowed you guys to be like, oh, this is not just like a two-hander where it's just we're just following these characters the whole time. Um, and yeah, I think that was how I approached it. Yeah, hope that helps.
No, that's great. Thank you. Thank you. So now we're going to sort of transition into the Q&A session, part of the info session. So you are welcome to, use all the functions of Zoom to ask us a question in the chat, to raise your hand, and as Michael is modeling, but just to sort of get us started, Michael, do you want to pose one of our frequently asked questions?
Yes, I will model a question here while folks think of their own. One of the questions we get a lot is about the fact that you're going to be checking, are you applying for the fellowship or are you applying for I-73? Sorry, it used to be called I-73. It's now just called the Writers Group. Or are you applying for both, in which case you check both boxes. And people, I think because that is like a physical thing you do, people will often pause and say like, well, is like, am I ready for the fellowship or maybe just the Writers Group? I will say in general, just go for it. Maybe you're feeling like you're too green for the fellowship, but the Writers Group would hit you at the right spot. And maybe that's true, but we're not gonna look badly on someone clicking the box for the fellowship, even if maybe we do agree also in the end that that's not the right resource. So like there's really no demerits for going for the fellowship in addition to the Writers Group. One thing I'll say is, if you do click both boxes, then your application really needs to address both opportunities. So don't leave out the fellowship or the Writers Group if you're applying for both when you're answering the question, how could our resources help? If you really don't live locally and you have no plans to live locally or anything like that, and so you're not applying for the Writers Group, that's totally great. And then you just get to focus your answers on the fellowship and don't check that box. Or if you're just in other Writers Groups and you don't want that, that's fine. That's a little more of a technicality. But the fellowship, we find people more just like hold back, but like I say go for it. Hari, we got our first question chatted in.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. What is the average number of applicants each year? Want to say it's in the vicinity of 400, right, Michael? 400? Yep. Yeah.
400 between them both. I think like some self-select out of the one and some of the other, but yeah, the number usually comes in. We go up some years, we go down a little bit. That sounds about right.
Yeah. All right. Christine, I see a raised hand. You wanted.
Hi.
Hi.
Yes. Hi. It's actually November. Nice to meet everybody.
Hi, November.
Hi. I was just wondering, do you accept musical submissions?
Yes, we do accept musical submissions. Typically when we've worked with musical theater writers, the writer of the music themselves are the, it's like either one person doing book music and lyrics, or for the writers group, like, oh, I think twice maybe, or at least once I can think of, we had the team themselves, like one did,
Okay.
you know. So yes, now the form, as you saw, there's not going to be like a particular extra place for uploading music, but Kari, would you jump in here and tell me what we've done with that in the past?
Since our module doesn't support sound files, when people write to inquire, we encourage them to just email them to us directly, and there's a way that we can add them to the application through the back end. Now, with our external readers, we can't necessarily guarantee that they will, listen to every single song or sample, but if they're in with the rest of your application materials, there's a very good chance that they will.
Okay, great. So I could email you a Dropbox link with all our music.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'll throw in an FAQ here, and then I see another chat one, which is writing teams, usually musical theater writing teams, but sometimes other writing teams have sometimes asked about applications for the fellowship. And we've never had a team become the fellow. As I said, we have had teams join the writers group. I don't know that there's some sort of hard and fast rule against a team becoming the fellow, but it doesn't, it's maybe not the best fit for the resources, why it also maybe doesn't happen very much. Like we are, the resource is meant to match with the writer who we can really push forward professionally and artistically with the resources. Again, as I'm saying that, I'm thinking it's not impossible to imagine a musical theater writing team sort of being the fellow, but transparently that hasn't ever come to be, and it might not be the most natural fit. Whereas the writers group, like, absolutely, and both people would need to be like applying to attend the writers group, not just half or whatever. But you could also yourself apply to the writers group, knowing you sometimes collaborate with someone else who's not in the writers group, and then they don't have to apply at all. You're just applying on the merit of your own work, and that's fine.
Got it.
Thank you. Okay, another question from the chat. If you get selected from the writers group, are you allowed to apply for the fellowship in the future? Yes, you are. It's a quick yes. Until you have graduated from our mission, you've had that off-Broadway career milestone, you are still eligible for our programs. We have had folks participate in the writers group and then reapply for the fellowship. We have even had a few people participate in the writers group more than once, never in consecutive years, but occasionally someone will come back to do the group again. No one would get the fellowship twice. That one doesn't work like that, but yes, it's very common for members of the writers group to reapply in a future cycle.
Yeah, we just mentioned that this was Sebastian's first application, and that is one way that this sometimes happens. But our fellow just prior to Sebastian had been a semifinalist, I think, 3 times, and got the fellowship then her 3rd time, and that has also happened many times. So both paths to getting the fellowship have definitely occurred over and over again.
Yeah, and Marvin, our 2022 fellow, got the writers group 1 year and then reapplied and got the fellow that year. So people have come to us from all different ways.
I see another question typed into the chat here. Do semifinalists automatically get offered to be in the writers group if they've selected to apply for the writers group? No, we name more semifinalists than there are slots in the writers group. So it's often a good indication that you're still in consideration strongly for it, but it is not the same thing. At the point when we name a semifinalist, we're talking about the fellowship. There aren't really semifinalists named for the writers group. You get you get approached, before it's public. We decide if it's going to be the right fit, we interview, etc. And then we'll just announce the 8 members of the writers group when the time comes.
Yeah, there comes a point when the process sort of diverges, because I think, Sebastian, we named you a semifinalist last September, and then it was a separate reach out saying, yes, we know you're a semifinalist, but now we want to talk about the writers group. Do you still want to go down this road with us? And then, so it kind of ended up being a dual interview process.
Yeah, and I would just add, like, it very much is. Like, I think when you're in the process, you're like, oh no, like my writers group interview is like an interview for the fellowship secretly. But I didn't feel that at all. It really was just a conversation of like, do you feel like this would be a good resource next year? And like, don't think about the fellowship right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a fellowship pre-screening in any way.
I'm glad you said that, Sebastian. I think that is important, because we do have to put the writers group together so much earlier, because we want people to be ready to start, attending in January. Justin, you have a question.
Yes, hello. So I was wondering, what's the sort of like mentorship and guidance involved with the program? Like, I know in previous programs that I've been a part of, I had like one-on-one mentor that I met with a couple times that really helped me like hone in on what I was trying to work on. So that's what I was wondering about the fellowship, because I know the writers group, it's a group dynamic. So with the fellowship.
Do you want to answer that, Sebastian?
Yeah, I've also been in groups where like I have been assigned like a specific writing mentor. And I think what's cool about the fellowship is that Michael and Kari, correct me if I'm wrong, are not writers. Like, they went to school for dramaturgy. They're really good dramaturgs. So it's less like a writing mentorship and more just like they've been doing this for a while. They understand off-Broadway, like the off-Broadway ecosystem. So in ways, it's like a career mentorship thing of just being like, hey, I have a question about how this works. Like how, like, I don't know, like it's like I can't think of a specific thing right now, but like, for example, if you don't have representation, I feel like Michael and Kari would be a great asset to be like, hey, like, who should I invite? What theaters, or like, what theaters is my work good for? Um, but like, obviously it's mentorship, but I also see it as like a relationship and like, not to sound corny, but like a friendship. Like I go to lunch with them and like, I don't feel like I'm in like a weird power dynamic. Maybe I'm supposed to, I don't think so, but like it really feels like an equal playing field of just like, this is what I'm thinking about with my career. How is like your production, how is the production of Stargazers going? It's like really a conversation. I wouldn't say that there's like specific mentorship in the way that there might be in other programs. I do think that um for the fellowship, it's good to just like kind of know what you want to do. Like, no one's going to tell you what to do with it. So I think having goals for yourself, that's like the most helpful thing that you can do. And then asking Michael and Kari, like, hey, I have these goals. Like, how should I go about trying to achieve them?
Oh, such a good sound. That's the soundbite from the info session. Yes, the fellowship is for a self-starter. It's for someone who knows, even if they're going to change their plan, which is totally fine, but who has some like direction and who knows what they want to do. Not because Kari and I are just going to sit there and stare at you and be like, well, you got the fellowship, now what? But that, first of all, it's going to make your application the strongest. And one of the things we often talk about with what makes for a good letter of intent is the sort of level of self-awareness that a writer can bring to both their artistic and professional challenges and how the resources will help them. And by that, I really don't mean, I know we're asking about challenges, but we're not asking you to, put yourself down in any way. We're just acknowledging that any artist at any point in their career, early, mid, or late, is going to be focused on something, is going to be trying to crack something. No points either for like originality. Like a lot of early career professional challenges, for instance, are very similar, and that's great. We want to hear in your words, your take on that, and that's sort of how we can assess, this person's really on the path and they need the support of this fellowship to really make a difference in their career, as opposed to this person doesn't seem to you know, understand sort of how to move forward, or they, you know, I do think the word challenge, I hope you can take in the best possible way of like what you're approaching, not I think some folks have a hard time sort of owning up to a challenge, and then actually that's a little bit of a red flag then for me, because we all have challenges that we're trying to address. But yeah, but come at it from a point of self-awareness and strength. That's like the right way, I would say. And then I'm just going to add one other thing about the mentorship side of things from the writers group angle, not so much the fellowship, which is that our writers group, probably like others, but Kari and I do attend the writers group. And so you're meeting with your fellow playwrights, and you have 2 dramaturgs there. And we often say this, and then we work to build the trust to really mean it, that we attend writers groups as dramaturgs. We also love getting to hear pages fresh and ask, you know, the questions that come to top of mind. And we don't want writers group to ever feel like it's being, you know, auditioned for the 2 producers in the room. And I think we do accomplish that. We work really hard to, and I think that the dynamic of the room is always really convivial. But so that's another way in which you're interacting with both writers in the writers group, and then also 2 dramaturgs who obviously care deeply about the work of the members as well.
I'll
And-
also, oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
go Sebastian, go.
No, I just want to add, like, I think what makes the sort of the fellowship application process pretty special, I found at least for page 73, is that Michael and Kari like get to know your work very quickly. Like they, like throughout the process, depending on how far you get, like they got to know 3 of my plays, and like they read them fast and like had thoughts and questions and reactions to it, which I don't think is something that you often get in other spaces, like in other early career spaces. So by the time that you know, if you get the fellowship, like Michael and Kari have a very good base of like what you're interested in, what you're writing about. And to me, that in a weird way is like the mentorship, like a deep investment in a writer. Yeah, so I think that's just like important to know if you go through the fellowship application process, is that Michael and Kari will become very intimate with your work, which is awesome.
You actually gave me a really nice segue there, Sebastian, because what I was going to add is that both the writers group, but especially the fellowship, we view it as a holistic resource for the writer, sort of as a person. It's not a resource for a play or for a production. The fellowship or the writers group, they aren't a commission. They don't come with commissions. It's not a guarantee of production. So you don't apply to page 73 saying, I want to work on this play and then have you produce it. That's not how it works. We are looking for someone that we can work with as a writer to sort of build out their body of work, to help them on every sort of professional level with the industry, all of that. But the fellowship is not a project-specific resource. So just wanted to throw that out there too, because we do get asked about that, or it gets conflated with a commission sometimes.
Yeah, the other thing it's not, in a way, is a writing competition. It's not, you know, the Yale Drama Prize goes to like the play that the Yale Drama Prize Committee likes the best that year, and that's great. That's one way to run a competition. Ours is a playwright development, you know, resource allocation. That was such a tortured way to put it. We're awarding the membership in the writers group or the fellowship to a person. You can write 13 different things in the writers group. There's no writers group play. You could start on one thing and switch to something else. It's not a march through one script necessarily, and same with the fellowship. Another FAQ that I thought we'd address is about the sample that you're going to put in with your full script into the application. Choosing good sample is an art. It really is. I encourage you to think carefully about the sample you choose. Tied into this question is also, if you happen to have applied in the past, should you use the same play or the same sample, or send us your newest work? So now I'll try to untangle all those questions I just hypothetically posed there. So basically, you are trying to put your best foot forward to the application readers, which will be me and Kari at a certain point, but is going to start with a panel of readers. If you've applied in the past, there's no reason to think like the person has read your work before. It might be the first time they're reading your work. So if the play that you are sort of farthest along with, that you think captures what you do as a writer, what you're writing about in that letter of intent by way of introducing yourself to us and your interests, then use that play. That's going to be the best play for you to use, even if you submitted it 1 year before. Or yeah, a year before. In terms of the sample, you know, the default of the first 10 pages can be great. There's a way that most plays are structured to welcome an audience in. I add the caveat that if you write in a sort of a slow naturalistic style, and the first 10 pages are behavioral, because that's how you would, you know, sort of envision the play to unfold slowly, you might want to think about pushing farther into your play, because it might not be the best showcase of what you're able to do, both from a character or dialogue development standpoint, or especially structure and how you're going to be using action, conflict, reversals, recognitions, et cetera, in your plays. So try to show us, you know, what you're interested in doing as a writer, more than feeling obliged to the first 10 pages. If you think that your first 10 pages are intentionally sort of a nice slow boil, that's great. That's lots of beautiful plays have some slow boils starts, but that might not be the best 10 pages. The other thing I'll say is a 10-page monologue is not better than 10 pages of dialogue, because there's more words on the page. If your play is a monologue play, then great, it's going to be a 10-page monologue. I understand that, but I wouldn't try to game it out to increase the word count that you're submitting necessarily. That's not always going to actually work out, you know, that's not always a benefit, I guess is what I want to say there. So yeah, spend some time on the sample choice, and as Kari reiterated, it does have to be from the full length you're submitting. You could pick the same full length as a different year, but maybe you're going to try a different sample this year if you're repeating it. That would be legit. Or maybe you know you picked the best sample, and that's great. There's, you know, it is a numbers game at a certain point. There's 8 slots out of 400. So don't feel that not having gotten it last year was a condemnation of your work at all. And if you know that the play you submitted and the sample you submitted are the best way to show your interest as a writer to us, then please, you know, feel confident in that and use that once again.
And we've got another question in the chat. Do you cut off submissions if you reach a set number before the deadline? No, we do not. There's no cutoff except the clock turning over on April 28th. So we invite any and all to apply. We know that the vast majority of you send in your applications at, you know, between 11:50 and midnight on the 28th. That's great. We always look forward to the way that they flood in at the 11th hour, but there is no number cut off. If you send them in, we will have the readers to read them.
I think we can wrap this up I have one more FAQ to put out there, but you know, if you're joining us live, raise your hand or type it in if you think of something else before that. But you know, a lot of people ask if there's a certain type of play or a certain aesthetic page 73 is looking for. I think especially if they're a writer, actually like Sebastian, I would say you are, who writes in different styles to tell different stories depending on, you know, which you're sitting down to work on. And I'm actually, Kari, I think I'm going to try my answer. I think you should also try your answer, because I think this is one of the more subjective questions we get. I would say that we are always looking for plays that are really excited to be theater. You can sort of take that how you will, I guess, but if you could just sort of film it for TV or film, and maybe it would even be better that way, that's probably not going to catch our attention as much as a play that's very alive in a theatrical sense and probably uses language in a very specific way, meaning there's no, I often, you know, if I'm teaching or something, we'll talk about, like, there's no default way that language is used in the world. And so the idea that there's a default way that plays sound doesn't work for me either. So like, I want to know how you think your characters sound, how you think the world, like what's your point of view on that language in the world? And I think those are the types of things that are in common with when I think about the 8 writers in the writers group this year, you included, Sebastian. I feel like that's a thing I see in common immediately amongst you all. Kari, do you want to add anything?
No, I think you nailed it. But yeah, I also would say that our current writers group is just a wonderful representation of the breadth and diversity in approaches to playwriting. I think all 8 are just wildly different writers, and that is what, as we're curating the group, makes it so interesting and exciting for us to put an eclectic group of writers in dialogue with each other. And of course, the same goes for the fellowship. We're just sort of there to be dazzled by your approach to language and your craft, but we don't have any sort of preconceived ideas of what sort of writer we're looking for as we approach every application process. See, answer another one in the chat, Michael?
Yeah, one more came in.
Yes. Is there a page limit to the full-length play? Can it be longer than 120 pages? No limit?
page limit. No, your full length can be whatever fits in your PDF, but no,
Yeah.
there's no page limit there. The 10-page limit we take seriously. We would tell our readers not to read past 10. We ask that you include a character list, and that doesn't count. We mean 10 pages of the play itself.
Yeah.
Feel free to reach out if after watching this on YouTube you have any questions, and the way we encourage you to do that is
emailing us at info@page73.org. And just to close us out, Sebastian, is there any additional advice? You've already thrown out some wonderful thoughts, but any other advice you would give to prospective applicants this year?
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you a question because I kind of forget. Because I think, like when you're going through a process, the original information sometimes becomes obsolete or doesn't give you all the information. So like, at what points do you guys ask for additional materials in the process?
Oh, that's a great question.
Because I was like, oh, that's right, as the process was going. So
yes. Oh, it's shifted a little over the years, but as we are currently doing it, we will name semifinalists, and then that is usually when we ask for another play as we begin reading the semifinalists to determine our finalists. And then when we're reading the finalists for the fellowship, we will ask for, there is something new, a work in process. It doesn't have to be a full play, just something representative of where your interests and passions currently lie as a writer. So again, that's where having like a certain of body of work does become necessary for this process, because by the fellowship stage, you're showing us 2.5 to 3 plays. And conversations around the writers group will also bring in, what are you working on right now? What direction are you going in with your writing? So it does end up being multiple plays in consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess to answer your question now, the advice I would give is, I think just be as honest as you can be. Like, I think as I was going into my finalist interview, I like reached out to a past fellow and I was like, I'm so nervous. Like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. And she was just like, oh, Michael and Kari just like want to know literally like what is actually going on in your head and like what you're thinking. So I think that is a good thing to just keep in mind as you're filling out this application. Like, there's no like correct secret code. It's just about whatever is actually occupying your thoughts and your career questions. So I would keep that in mind as you work on the app.
No, I think that's a really good piece of advice and rings true to me for how we run it. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Those of you who joined live tonight, those of you who are watching this later on YouTube, we really hope it helps with your application. And again, email us questions at info@page73.org and get your applications in by end of day April 28th.
And we look forward to reading your work and getting to know some of you through your application.